There's no doubt about it. Money makes the world go round. There's a lot to know and a lot of information out there. But there's one podcast that covers all the topics involving finance. The Wealth and Freedom Podcast. Their mission is to educate and empower everyone to create a path for financial independence. The Wealth and Freedom Podcast covers all the financial topics you can imagine. They have interviews with leading experts on asset protection, passive income, real estate investing, precious metals, turnkey companies, cryptocurrencies, foreign residencies, and passports. And that's just the beginning. They cover much, much more than that. The Wealth and Freedom Podcast has it all. Find them on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, or at wealthandfreedomnexus.com.
You are listening to The Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at briancraigshow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
Welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Brian Craig, always joined by my wife and co-host, Kathy. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Make sure that you follow and subscribe on whatever platform you are listening to us on. All right, well, we've got a big story here today. Madison Cawthorn has really begun the beginning of the biggest scandal ever to rock Washington, D.C. And,
I agree. Sex scandal anyway.
Well, it's a sex and drug scandal.
Oh, my goodness.
And I want to play this audio in just a moment, but I want to tell you guys, this is how the Monica Lewinsky story started, okay? Little story, very vague, didn't know who, didn't have names, didn't know anything, and things come out. So let's just play this.
He's opened a can of worms.
Yeah, this is Madison Cawthorn. He gave an interview and dropped really some bombshells here. Listen.
Sexual perversion that goes on in Washington. I mean, being kind of a young guy in Washington, where the average age is probably 60 or 70. And I look at all these people, a lot of them that I've looked up to through my life. I've always paid attention to politics, guys that, then all of a sudden you get invited to, like, oh, hey, we're going to have kind of a sexual get-together at one of our homes. You should come. And I'm like, what did you just ask me to come to? And then you realize they're asking you to come to an orgy. Or the fact that, there's some of the people that are leading on the movement to try and remove, addiction in our country. And then you watch them do, a key bump of cocaine right in front of you. And it's like, wow, this is wild.
Okay. So this is interesting. See, what he's detailing here is, he's a MAGA guy. Madison Cawthorn is the youngest person ever elected to Congress,
and the best looking, by the way.
Yeah, he
looks like a Ralph Lauren model.
Yeah.
He's very handsome.
Yeah, he's 26 years old, and he's very strong MAGA. He travels around with Right Side Broadcasting and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and really, what this was an attempt by the DC political elite and the political establishment to get blackmail material on Madison Cawthorn. They wanted to invite him to this party. There's video cameras probably hidden, and
probably
then
what
got
they do
him.
to all of them.
Well, yeah, and he didn't fall for it. And the thing about this, I was listening to Charlie Kirk the other day. I haven't talked about this because I didn't want to talk about it right away because I had an observation about Charlie Kirk, and I like Charlie Kirk, but he said something the other day that really showed how full of himself he is. He was on the War Room with Steve Bannon last week, and he had gotten a Twitter suspension over one of his tweets, and he's not going to remove it, and he's getting on board that Babylon Bee train, and it was an interesting interview, and everything with Steve Bannon's always good. And then he talked about how, well, I know that I am influencing policy, and policymakers are following me on my Twitter, and I'm influencing. I was like, my goodness, this guy's it's one thing for him to think that, it's another thing for it to be true, and it's a whole other thing to say it out loud. I mean, he's very arrogant. And Madison Cawthorn exposed this eyes wide shut thing here. See, Charlie Kirk isn't influencing the policymakers.
Not at all.
Whoever's paying for the hookers at the orgy and the cocaine, they're the ones that are influencing policy. See, what we all do, Charlie Kirk, me, you guys out there listening, what we do is put a spotlight on things and we talk about it. okay? And talking about it puts a spotlight on things, takes things that are in the dark, puts them out there, and that does have some influence. But the major influence are the donors and the people that are funding these eyes wide shut parties. Now, yeah.
Well, it's being reported now in the New York Post. There's an update to this story. Today at 3:00, they just posted this half an hour ago. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy will have a word with freshman Rep. Madison Cawthorn.
Oh, wow.
After he made comments on a podcast last week that fellow GOP lawmakers depicted them as sex-crazed party animals. A number of Republicans at a closed-door conference meeting Tuesday sounded off to McCarthy after claims by Cawthorn that some of his colleagues had invited him to orgies and snorting lines of coke. Blah, blah, blah. Rep. Steve Womack, one of the lawmakers who reported rose to speak. You know what that means. Said he was getting grilled by media members about Cawthorn's claims of drug use and debauchery. Womack reminded his caucus colleagues that many of them hit the sack by 9. And it doesn't mean they're hitting the sack alone and still use fax machines and flip phones. Well, let me tell you something. You know how when, I'm not saying this guy's guilty, but you know how when there's like somebody gets killed and the person who killed them goes and shows up to look for the body and look for the person and they get involved in the search? That's kind of what's going on here, I feel. Like he's speaking up and trying to get control of the situation. This Steve Womack representative.
I thought you meant Madison Cawthorn.
No, why all of a sudden is he getting involved and saying something like, well, we go to bed at 9:00, and because he's trying to get control of this story right away. And you have to ask yourself, and if he was my rep, I'd be very curious why he is speaking out
and this
right away on this.
This thing that he said about fax machines and flip phones. The reason guys like this would use flip phones and things like this is they're not tracked like, Android and iPhones with all the apps. It's more confidential, and it's Kevin McCarthy, if they're calling him in to reprimand him, if I were Kevin McCarthy, the way I would handle it was I want to immediately meet with Madison Cawthorn. I want to know the members of this Congress who are involved in cocaine orgies, sex orgies. I want to know who these people are because we do not want them in the halls of Congress. And it sounds like they're openly reprimanding Madison Cawthorn for talking out of school. So when something like this is not true, what Madison Cawthorn is alleging here, and I do believe it's true. I don't think he's a liar. And that's some lie to make, right?
I think it's definitely true.
It's 100% true.
Absolutely.
And Kevin McCarthy and these other people that are talking about it, they're in a panic. And this is, when it's not true, this is how you handle it. Now, this is only the case if it's not true. If you're Kevin McCarthy and these other members of Congress, you demand Madison Cawthorn come forward, tell us who, when, what, and where. What member of Congress invited you to an orgy? Who was the congressman that did this key of cocaine?
Oh my gosh!
And where did this happen? Where were you? You put it upon. If it's not true, you put it upon him to give you the information, and either he does or he doesn't. And if he doesn't, he's making it up. But they're terrified of this.
Oh yeah,
and that's why they're acting like they're going to reprimand him. Now, Meghan McCain wrote today in Breitbart that she's calling on him to name names.
Well, I'm sure she knows a few things.
She's the only one.
This cannot be a big secret in D.C. I'm sure this stuff goes on, and it's been going on for years. I'm surprised nobody's come out and said anything sooner, especially when but maybe they're afraid of reprisals or for whatever reason they keep their mouth shut. There's a lot of debauchery and things that go on in Hollywood and D.C. that we don't know about, and it would probably make our hair turn white if we heard all the real stories. He said it's like House of Cards. And I know you watched that show, and he said that's what it's like. And Eyes Wide Shut, I'm guessing, and all this stuff. People with a lot of power and a lot of money do weird stuff. I've noticed they get weird. I think because to get to that position, they're corruptible, and most of them, and they're corrupted. And when you get into that life, your normal changes. You lose your perspective, and your normal becomes very abnormal. But to you, it's normal. Like people that are in a swinging lifestyle. Okay, to them, that becomes a normal way of life after a while. And People that don't do it are the weird ones. You know what I mean? And I think people in DC and Hollywood, they get in that world and they get in the world of drugs and debauchery. And at first it's shocking, like with Madison Cawthorn. Now he's spoken up about it. But after a while, it becomes normal to them.
Well, what happens with people...
Or corruption, this is just how it's done.
This is like, okay, what happens with people, they get in it's a bubble. Like
yes, exactly.
Okay, like these lunatic teachers on Libs of TikTok that make these crazy videos from their classrooms. They're in this bubble. Yeah. And when you get in this bubble, you're in another world. Everybody around you is in this bubble that you have contact with.
So it becomes normal.
You think it's normal. Now, this thing with Madison Cawthorn, I believe every syllable of it. And this is very interesting. Like I said, when I was talking about Charlie Kirk and others not having influence, see, all of these congressmen that he's talking about, and he said men, it wasn't, they have all kinds of proof against them, right?
I'm sure they're very nervous.
And this is why nothing gets done in Washington, because they're all corrupted, either through money dealings like Biden, or these sex and drug things that are going on.
It's like the movie The Firm. Remember when Tom Cruise, it's just like that. Tom Cruise got into that big firm in Memphis. It's a great book, by the way. And they set up for him to have sex with this beautiful woman
on the beach.
On the beach when they took him down to this Gene Hackman took him down to this place that the firm had in the Caribbean.
Yeah, Cayman Islands.
And they set up for him, this woman, they set up the whole thing where she was being beaten up by her boyfriend and Tom Cruise came in, the hero, and saved her. She seduced him. Well, they had a photographer in the bushes taking photographs. And once that happened, they owned his ass. And that's what's happening here. And I think that happens, and power and greed and what that comes with is very seductive to people. They get wrapped up in it. And then in the swamp, they own you now. They have photographs. They own your ass now, just like Tom Cruise in The Firm.
And what they attempted to do with Madison Cawthorn was get him to the party, get him in the orgy, get him with the drugs. Then this is just like when Comey went to Trump Tower with the fake Russian dossier and tried to get Trump to play ball by either making the dossier disappear or investigate it openly, like they ended up doing.
Right. It's all
true.
It's all corrupted. And Trump came in and wouldn't play their reindeer games, and he would not be a part of the corruption.
Yeah.
And they really have tried desperately to make him look corrupt, because that's what they do. But they don't. None of this stuff has worked. None of their usual tricks have worked with Trump. Because, like you always say, he's got nothing to hide. He's a squeaky clean Marine, and they can't handle it.
Now, I want to take a moment to thank our Patreon supporters for their support of the program. All of you who are Patreon supporters, your support does help us out a lot. It's great support for this program. It is greatly appreciated by both Kathy and myself. And if you would like to support the program, a great way to do that is to become a Patreon supporter. And if you go into the description of this episode on whatever platform you're listening to us on, you'll see a link to our Patreon page. Now, depending on the platform, it may be clickable, it may not be clickable. Okay, so you may have to copy and paste it. It's patreon.com/RealBrianCraigShow, patreon.com/RealBrianCraigShow. And there are perks to becoming a Patreon supporter, including, you're supporting this incredible podcast of ours. But also you get commercial-free editions of each and every podcast episode. And our top Patreon supporters get a live on-air thank you shout-out on each and every episode. So the names you will hear now are our top Patreon supporters. I want to thank Andrew and Connie, Christine, Gary, ETW, Chuck, D, Pamela, Jacqueline, Rich, Rick, and Nick. These are our top Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. And again, if you'd like to become a Patreon supporter, check out the link in the description of this and every episode. And, this business with Madison Cawthorn's allegations, we have to say, alleged, Meghan McCain may not be so privy. This is a thing for the for the men. And she's the daughter, okay, of someone. They don't tell the ladies.
She thought Joe Biden was a great guy.
And, these congressmen, the men in particular, they live in Washington. They leave their wives and families back home in the district, most of them. And sometimes you'll hear that they're roommates. Like there could be 4, 5, 6 members of Congress living in a house together or an apartment together. You hear these stories, the stories about the guys sleeping in their offices, all that BS. So these are guys that are away from their wives, away from their families, and they have obviously this secret society going on over there.
And there's probably so many high-class hookers in Washington, D.C. That's big money. I mean, look at Hunter. He paid $30,000 or something for one night.
This is different than the Hunters. If you go to the laptop from hell, these are even higher end. They're even more than what Hunter will pay. This is at the Eyes Wide Shut level, Stanley Kubrick level of what.
Yeah, like
Madison
Victoria's
Cawthorn
Secret models.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe even a few D-list celebrities.
I would not be surprised.
No, I would not be surprised.
I would not be surprised. And this is absolutely amazing. And I hope more people like us continue to talk about this. And I hope that anyone who has an opportunity to see Madison Cawthorn in person asks him to name names. In fact, we should call on him to do that. Now, listen, we're going to take a quick break. But before we do, I just want to say, these people that Madison Cawthorn are talking about, he's talking about Republicans, okay? The Democrats are doing it too. I get it. But the ones,
you don't know that he's talking about Republicans.
No, I do. I'll tell you why.
It could be a mix.
I'll tell you why I know it's Republicans that are doing this. Obviously, the Democrats are too. I'm not saying the Democrats are moral people. They're trying to get him on board. They're trying to corrupt Madison Cawthorn. So what they do is they bring in people, they bring in guys that he respects, that he's bonded with, that he knows, he doesn't respect Democrats. And they befriend him and try to bring him into this lowlife thing so they can get the blackmail material.
Well,
so these are Republicans he's talking about.
Well, I think they made a mistake approaching a man who probably can't have sex.
I don't think that's true.
Well, if it is true, he can't have it, so he's not going to be a part of that.
I don't think that's true.
You don't think so?
I don't think that's true. I think he can, yeah.
So he just hurt his legs. He's not paralyzed.
I don't know all the details, but that is not something I've heard brought up about Madison Cawthorn. Listen, we're going to take a break. When we get back, there's a lot more to talk about. Let us know in the comments, though, what you think about this scandal. Do you believe Madison Cawthorn? I do.
Yeah, we'll put a poll up in your YouTube channel.
Yeah, what do you think?
I think he's opened a can of worms. I think it's extremely
he's in big trouble.
Provocative. I don't know. I think it's very provocative, and I think there are a lot of people, maybe Miranda Devine, who would be very interested. Now it depends on. Now this could be a well-kept secret. People in Washington and the media, they might know this already. And maybe they keep it under wraps for whatever reason. I'm sure there's rumors, just like in Hollywood, there were rumors for years about Harvey Weinstein and nobody said anything. I'm sure there's rumors. I'm sure people hear things and know things. And people in the media, they might even be party to this. If it's a big Eyes Wide Shut thing, I mean, who knows who's involved? It could be everybody that's in D.C., like in Eyes Wide Shut, it was everybody in the entertainment business. This could be everybody in the political business involved. And somebody tried to bring him into the fold. And I am just shocked that nobody has spoken out about this because I'm sure this has been going on for decades. I am shocked that you don't think Ted Kennedy was into some freaky stuff?
Of course he was.
I am surprised nobody has spoken out, and good for him for doing so. And I think this is definitely not going away. It'll be very interesting to see who pursues this.
Well, I'm pursuing it.
What's going to happen?
And, it's fascinating because what we saw was an attempt to corrupt a member of Congress. All right, we're going to take our break. When we get back, there is much more to talk about. We've just scratched the surface. Don't go anywhere. I'm Brian, always joined by my wife and co-host Kathy. Back after this.
Have you wanted to learn how to make a living in real estate? Real estate can be intimidating, but with the right guidance, you can begin a successful real estate career. Shannon Robnett is a second-generation builder and developer, fourth-generation realtor with over 35 years experience in real estate. And on his podcast, Robnett's Real Estate Rundown, he shares his experience and knowledge with listeners. Listen to this clip from a recent episode.
And I've always been able to get people to help me bring that dream to life so that at the end of the day, what we're seeing happen is we're seeing a raw piece of land turn into a commercial investment that is of benefit to the whole community. And then out of that, we're able to create a significant upside for the investors in that development project. So after 12 or 14 months, those investors will receive, I don't want to brag, but over 35% return.
Shannon Robnett shares advice that's actionable on wholesaling, fix and flips, single family, multifamily, and more. Robnett's Real Estate Rundown is available on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, YouTube, Podchaser, and Spotify. Add Robnett's Real Estate Rundown to your playlist right now. From author and veteran Lex R. Brown comes the book Grit, Grind, Grow, a guide to conquering career transition, available on Amazon. Making a transition in life can be overwhelming, but Grit, Grind, Grow is designed to help you approach your career like an entrepreneur so that you are always adaptable and empowered to land bigger and better career offers quickly, frequently, and consistently. Each year, 250,000 members of the armed forces leave the military to reintegrate into the civilian workforce. Grit, Grind, Grow is written by a military veteran who has proven the information in this book firsthand and has empowered numerous others to replicate those successes. This is a must-read for transitioning military veterans, military spouses, those currently unemployed, recent college grads, professionals of color, seasoned professionals over the age of 50, and anyone else searching for solutions and seeking better results. Order your copy right now. Grit, Grind, Grow, a guide to conquering career transition, from author and veteran Lex R. Brown on Amazon. Do you wish you had a time machine to do life all over again? In life, each day is a new day of discovery. The podcast, The Joys of Being You, available on Apple Podcast and Spotify, hosted by Wesley Griffith, is all about helping you become your soul-driven self. When you listen to The Joys of Being You, you will find out who you are and why you are here. Wesley Griffith has been in sales for over 25 years. He's an entrepreneur, a small business owner, and a spiritual life coach. With this must-listen to podcast, you will learn how to build a better mindset. So much of what we think and feel becomes our future. If you want a better future, you need to change the way you think, and it will change how you feel, and will change the outcome of your life. People are afraid of the unknown, but you don't have to be. This is how Wesley Griffith approaches life, and he wants to share his knowledge and expertise with you, not living within limits and thinking differently. The Joys of Being You with your host, Wesley Griffith, is available on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Add The Joys of Being You to your playlist right now.
You are listening to the Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at BrianCraigShow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Brian Craig, always joined by my wife and co-host Kathy. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and make sure you follow and subscribe on whatever platform you are listening to us on.
Well, today Matt Gaetz put into motion to have the contents, which he said he has. He held up like a little disk or something, little hard drive, I should say, not a disk. He held up a hard drive. He said, I move to enter into evidence the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop, which I have right here in my hand. Goodness. And I would play the clip, but it's like a 6-minute thing, but I retweeted it, and I'm sure you'll look at it later. And, of course, Jerry Nadler and them started objecting, and Matt Gaetz said, well, why do you object? Yeah. What's your objection? And there was total silence for like 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. He had people behind him chirping in his ear, telling him that they're completely panicked.
They should be.
Because they don't want, this to be, it's already bad enough. They're trying to avert a disaster. And let me tell you, if this is why it's so important to vote. If we win the House and Senate, I can promise you Joe Biden will be impeached over this, and this will come out, and there will be hearings on this. And I think this is an impeachable, unlike with Trump, this is an impeachable offense, and I think he could be removed for stuff like this because Miranda Devine, from what you told me, there are a lot of connections between Biden and money being exchanged.
Yeah, a lot.
His family making deals that he profited off of, paying for hookers and this and that. They're really concerned with the money, follow the money trail, and what roads lead to Joe Biden. And if we win the House and Senate, I think they are going to impeach him over this and go after this and really pursue this. So they're trying to lay the groundwork for that, because you got a lot of guys in Congress now, like Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan and other guys that are on our side. And Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're not going to let this go. They're not. They're going to keep talking about it. Bo Bird. They're not going to let this go. This is why they don't want them in Congress, because they bring out the truth. And they don't want you to hear the truth. They're trying to. Do you see where George Takei? I know you follow him on Twitter, so I have to see his tweets once in a while. He said, "Let's not talk about impeaching Joe Biden. Let's just move on to the future." Okay, so it was okay to impeach Trump twice for nothing, for stupid things, and waste our time, our money, have complete aggravation, divide people. It's okay to do that, but it's not okay to impeach Joe Biden when he actually committed crimes, supposedly.
I like how George Takei.
Give me a break.
George Takei thinks it's time to move on from this Hunter Biden laptop thing. Meanwhile, his whole life is about the internment camps of the Americans of Japanese descent.
Exactly.
He can't let that go. No, we're not going to move on, George Takei.
Exactly. He lives in the past.
And I'll tell you, as big of a Star Trek fan as I am, and I've been out to dinner with George Takei, I've been snorkeling with George Takei. And he spent his whole life, almost all of it, his professional career in the closet and afraid to come out. And he's not brave for coming out, because he came out basically after he was retired.
Yeah.
And, so he's not a brave man. And like Hunter Biden, he knows about secrets,
That's for sure.
Now, this Madison Cawthorn story, I turned on Fox today, turned on Outnumbered. I'm like, they must be talking about this. And they were talking about Will Smith again, and a bunch of nonsense. And I said, this is ridiculous. I felt like they were covering up this Madison Cawthorn thing because, they're so connected to the Republican establishment at Fox. So I thought to myself, well, let me go to CNN, which I hate to do. But I go over to CNN because surely they're talking about this Republican sex orgy drug scandal. We've got a Republican member of Congress who has seen at least one Republican member of Congress snorting cocaine. And what are they talking about? They got Bob Woodward. They went to the nursing home. They got Bob Woodward on, and they're talking about the missing phone records of President Trump on January 6th.
They're not going to talk about it because I told you.
Because it's true.
People on the left and people in the media, they're all part of this club.
Yeah, it's true.
They're all part of this weird sex club.
That's why it's true. Now, this thing about the Trump phone logs, this is from the Daily Mail. I'll just read this to you. And I'll tell you about Bob Woodward in a minute. But it says here, Trump's phone logs from January 6th have a 7-hour gap. The January 6th committee is now investigating a possible cover-up and whether he used back channels or burner phones to contact aides and allies during the Capitol riot. Okay, so they bring Bob Woodward on because of the 7-hour gap in the phone logs, okay?
Proves nothing.
The reason they brought in Bob Woodward is because there was an 18-and-a-half-minute gap in the Oval Office tapes with President Nixon when he was talking to his attorney.
Exactly.
And they're of course trying to draw a comparison.
Exactly.
Here's the thing, okay? The phone logs. President Trump is the first president to actually communicate on cell phones and text messaging. None of the others did. When Obama first became president, they were making a big deal that he had a BlackBerry. He had a BlackBerry. He got a Walkman too, Barack. But he didn't use it like Trump did. Trump was always on social media. He didn't. Very few of us actually talk on the phone to people. They have some phone communications and logs. He called Steve Bannon on January 6th, and they got a whole list of people he talked to. But this 7-hour gap, there's no scandal here.
No,
the 7-hour gap is because he doesn't use landlines. He doesn't use phones. He uses text message and Twitter. So I have my phone with me.
Yeah, he was still on Twitter then, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was still on Twitter. I have a cell phone like you guys do. I have an iPhone, and I don't talk on it that much. I talk to two people on it, Kathy and Steve Kane. Everyone else, I text.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's how most people are. So if you were...
This is weak. They got nothing on the guy. They got nothing.
If you were following me or most of you out there, we would have hours a day of no phone records because we
Yeah.
don't use our phones. And another thing we do know is on January 6th, like many other days, President Trump was communicating through Mark Meadows on text messages. That's why Clarence Thomas's wife and others, they were texting Mark Meadows. And this scandal that they're trying to create has a lot to do with Madison Cawthorn and trying to get rid of that story in the news. So now this is the beginning with this phone log gap of Trump. That's all you're going to hear about. And of course, all the answers to everything are in those missing hours
Give me a break.
on the phone logs. Yeah. Now,
You know, the difference is
Yeah.
Trump is no Nixon. He's not a coward. He's
Yeah,
not
or
going
a
to
criminal.
quit.
No.
He's not going to run away.
exactly.
And what they're hoping to do, they're taking a playbook out of all the president's men. Remember
Yeah.
that lady was reading
Strzok and Page.
it? The difference is Trump is not Nixon. Nixon was part of the swamp. He was a politician. He was overly concerned with his image. And I know people think Trump's concerned with his image, but I really don't. I think he just does not care what these people in D.C. think. And he's not going to give. They tried some. I remember them talking about it on CNN that he might quit because he couldn't take the heat,
Yeah.
and they were like really hoping he is not a quitter. He is never going to quit. In fact, he's going to come back for more. And they're trying to create this illusion that there's this 7 hours, like you said, of mystery that makes him look
That's
guilty.
when he did all the conspiring.
Like with Nixon, but like I said, he's not Nixon. He's tougher, way tougher.
And you know, the 18 and a half minutes on the Nixon tapes, I'll tell you, this is a strange thing.
Yeah.
On my YouTube recommendations earlier today, I started getting things about the Nixon 18 and a half minute tapes, and I didn't look up anything about any of these scandals or the Trump things or anything on YouTube. It's like they were feeding it to me. But Oliver Stone and all these Nixon haters, you know, they hated Nixon. Nixon was a good guy, did nothing wrong, but they've told themselves all these years that everything it was in those 18 and a half minutes
Yeah.
that we don't have
ridiculous.
would probably happen. One of two things happened. They were having a private conversation
Yeah.
about Watergate and they turned the recorder off. Okay, big deal. Or maybe they just weren't that technically proficient and they erased 18 and a half minutes quite by accident. There's not necessarily scandal with that.
Or maybe he talked about something personal with his wife,
Exactly.
his daughter.
Well, he was with his attorney when
Well,
during that
still,
time.
maybe there was a personal legal issue that had nothing to do with
Exactly.
politics, that had to do with his wife or family or something, and it was a delicate issue. And he just, I remember when I was in 10th grade, my economics teacher went to the Bahamas over the summer, and she met Richard Nixon walking on the beach.
Oh, how lucky of her. That's
And
cool.
of course, at the time, I didn't think it was a big deal.
I bet she did.
I was
though.
like, whatever. And she told us, or she was on vacation or something, and she came back and she told us she was so excited. And she passed pictures around the classroom. And he was with his wife, and they met them on the beach, and they posed for pictures.
Wow.
And she was talking about how nice he was and this and that. So she must have been a Republican.
Yeah.
Can't remember her name, but anyway, it just made me think of that. And I was like,
That's
who
pretty cool.
cares? Of course, now I'd be like, wow, I remember when I was in New York with my dad and my stepmom and Emily. I'd never seen a politician before, and we were by the Met, and we had lunch at this very fancy restaurant. And right next to us was Tom Daschle with his wife. Do you remember him?
He was a
His
senator.
wife
Yeah.
was beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, older woman. Let me tell you, I'd never seen a politician or anything like that in real life. Let me tell you something. They were dressed
They're all rich.
better than I have ever seen
They're all rich. The corrupt.
anybody. They just like oozed money.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so well put together. And I knew right away who he was. I mean, I knew a little bit about politics. And anyway, you've
'Cause
met
they're
more
all-
politicians than I have.
They're all corrupt.
Yeah.
Now, this is really a disgusting story. Listen to this. A school district in the state of Washington has passed a new policy that critics say encourages administrators to factor in race when disciplining students. The Clover Park School District Board approved a new policy with a 3-2 vote on March 14th over the objections of school board members
Wow.
who expressed concerns that it was ill-conceived. The district in the suburbs of Tacoma will now use culturally responsive discipline that encourages school staff to impose disciplinary policies that may be adapted to individual student needs in a culturally responsive manner. Critics say the new approach is in effect a race-based disciplinary policy
Absolutely.
that will encourage harsher or lighter punishments based on a student's race, with white students being disciplined more severely because, of course, they've had it easy all their life.
Of course.
The minority students have had it rough, so we've got to make the white students feel the pain. The district,
well, because they think all black people are poor and need help,
and struggling.
They're like they treat them like pets, like they always have.
Exactly.
They need our help. They're not smart. Remember Joe Biden? He said poor kids are as smart as white kids.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really how they think. They really feel that they're dumb and that they need a helping hand from the white man.
Yeah.
This is not only racist, it's illegal.
Yeah, it is.
We'll see what happens.
It is. You know, this business that's going on with critical race theory and all this, you know, many years ago, Steve Kane and I were on the diversity committee for our local school board. Mm-hmm. And this was 15 or 20 years ago. And this was before Black Lives Matter. But they had there was a black activist who thought that students were being disciplined too harshly based on race.
Right.
So they were proposing a new referral system that would have on the referral the ethnicity of the teacher writing the referral and the ethnicity of the student, so they could compile this data. Wow. And it almost passed. Because except for Steve and myself, everybody just thought, oh, well, this is just a wonderful idea. Yeah, maybe we should get to the bottom of this. And, of course, we put up objections, and then people started to wake up, and it didn't happen. But this race-based discipline is something that's been going on for a long time. When I was in high school, I had a dean who he was my dean, and I saw him quite a bit because I was, always in trouble. And he's black, and everyone at school would say that he was so hard when it came to disciplining white students, and when it came to disciplining black students, slap on the wrist.
Is that true?
Yeah, it was true, and it was awful, and he didn't see anything wrong with it because, like this and this was in the 80s. Because we had it easy,
right?
And
and all black people have it hard.
Meanwhile, he was a PhD. He was a doctor of education. We had to call him doctor and everything else.
Exactly.
And then this guy. Let me tell you what happened to this guy. Yeah. He got arrested. He was having sex with a cheerleader at the school, and I don't know how old he was at the time, but he looked old. He's probably in his 40s, 30s, 40s. But he seemed like an old man to me. I was in 9th, 10th grade. And he was having sex with one of the cheerleaders at school, who, by the way, not that this matters, but she was white.
Maybe he felt guilty over that. That's why he took out his anger on white people.
I guess so. Yeah, and he was put on trial and everything. I don't know whatever happened to that guy.
I'm sure he went to jail.
But this idea of having different punishments based on ethnicity, it's not a new idea. No. But what it shows you, what's happened with the Democrats, you see this with the Squad. People that were fringe lunatics in the liberal movement are now the main movers and shakers of liberal
that's
policy.
Right, and they're making laws, and they're making. But see, they see DeSantis with his. Now he's dubbed it. I know they're calling it "Don't Say Gay." It's a parents' right bill.
The parental rights.
But I read one article in Post Millennial, and they have a great term. It's the anti-grooming bill.
Yeah,
which I think that's really clever. And they think he's a radical. They think that what he's doing in education is radical and crazy. You know what I mean? So it's just amazing how people just are so different on so many issues. Of course, he's the sane one, obviously. I mean, 5-year-olds should not be taught about this kind of stuff. But, here you have Washington. So luckily in this country, you can live where you want. And if you live in Washington and you value your children's education and to be treated fairly and properly, you need to move to Florida.
Well,
clearly.
The whole time that I was in public school, K through 12, looking back, I didn't know very much about any of my teachers' personal life. I mean, I had one teacher who was pregnant.
Exactly.
There were 2 teachers at my school who everyone knew that they were gay, and that only happened by accident. They were at a gay pride parade in Fort Lauderdale, and their pictures were in the paper. in the parade, so everybody saw it, but they didn't. You never knew, had no idea they never talked about it.
No,
and you know
it
what?
It wasn't appropriate.
And you know what? Even the teachers that weren't gay, I don't know if they were married or not. Really, I mean, do you guys ever remember your teachers talking about their personal lives and what they do at home? I don't really think that's appropriate.
Well, you have because they
no
were
matter
different.
What their background
I agree,
is.
and they were a different generation. Those were the baby boomers that were teaching us. And now this new generation want to share their lives, their feelings. They're into sharing. They're not into privacy anymore.
Well, that's part of social media.
That's right.
Their whole life is an Instagram story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they had this one teacher on Twitter. I retweeted it. He was on MSNBC, and he was all upset because now he can't talk about his husband to his kindergartners.
I've got that. You want to hear it?
Yeah, I want to mention one thing, though. I forgot to say about Matt Gaetz with Hunter's laptop. He tried to enter it into the record, and the FBI director said they don't know where his laptop is. He asked him directly.
Well, Rudy Giuliani has a copy of the hard drive.
Right, but he asked the FBI guy, the FBI cyber chief.
So they destroyed evidence.
He said, do you know where Hunter's laptop is? And he said, I don't know. So it's going to get disappeared.
So someone's been destroying evidence.
Well, Matt Gaetz has a copy of
and
it,
so
which
does
I'm
Mayor
sure
Giuliani.
he got from Julie. I'm sure it's been passed around.
Yeah, so you know what? Let us take the break. I'll come back. And this Florida kindergarten teacher is very upset at Ron DeSantis. So I'll play that audio when we get back. I'm Brian, always joined by my wife and co-host Kathy. We'll be back right after this. Don't go anywhere.
What's going on in the world of robotics? Find out on the podcast, This is Robotics Radio News with your host, Tom Green. This is Robotics Radio News gives listeners the latest news about robotics, as well as informative commentary on the subject. There are also interviews with experts from around the world, filled with super and useful information and presented as a 30-minute podcast. This is Robotics Radio News is perfect to listen to on the way to or home from work. You're going to love what you hear. News and commentary from around the world about robotics on the podcast. This is Robotics Radio News, available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcast, and wherever you listen to podcasts. How would you like to start winning? Of course you do. Who doesn't, right? The book from author Aaron Parker, The 1 Unit Profit Strategy, available on Amazon, is the help you've been waiting for. Author Aaron Parker has found a way to make money so easy it's funny. So sit down and relax with a cup of tea or coffee as you eat toast with honey. The 1 Unit Profit Strategy can help you win any game of chance involving 2 different betting options. Make use of this amazing strategy and you could win more money than you lose. The 1 Unit Profit Strategy is full of valuable information that you can actually use. Author Aaron Parker wants to help you win, and his book is your key to success. What are you waiting for? Start winning and order your copy of The 1 Unit Profit Strategy from author Aaron Parker on Amazon. Is life passing you by? Are you doing what you love or going through the motions? Time is ticking, but it is never too late. Join host Krista Laurie for the podcast Bucket List Careers. This show delves into very cool jobs with the people who do them, the how behind their pivots, and their secrets to help you successfully monetize doing what you love. Krista was a New York-based news anchor, business show host, and reporter in the field for years. Now she shares stories that will inspire you to identify your purpose, remove roadblocks, and initiate the launch of your bucket list career. You can find the podcast at bucketlistcareerspodcast.com. Start listening today and get excited about life again.
You are listening to the Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at briancraigshow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Brian Craig, always joined by my wife and co-host, Kathy. So let me play this audio we talked about before the break. A Florida kindergarten teacher, who's a guy, went on MSNBC, is upset about this. And I'll tell you something. I don't know, maybe this is sexist of me, but I think kindergarten teachers should be women. That's just me because I think they still want the mommy at that age. I don't know. I think it would have been weird to have a kindergarten teacher who was a man myself.
I've seen, I don't think I had a male teacher until middle school.
Yeah, me too.
But there were, when I was in elementary school, and I went to I actually went to 5 different elementary schools like you. I went to a lot of elementary schools. I think there were maybe 3 or 4 male teachers that I knew of, and they always really scared me when I was a little kid for some reason, even though they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Because guy teachers are good.
Yeah.
But, more in high school and middle school. But it doesn't bother me that it's a guy, but this is going to bother me.
So this guy, he's a kindergarten teacher here in Florida, and he's upset at the parental rights bill. You know, yesterday we were talking about this. I got some nasty comments from people. It's not that. Don't say gay bill. It doesn't say.
Yeah, let's not call it that.
Listen, we have to do the reference from time to time so everyone knows what we're talking about.
Let's call it the anti-grooming bill.
Like
post-millennial. I like that one.
Whatever, we got to let people know what we're talking about.
They know.
So, but anyway, here's the interview with the teacher, and let's play them. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, it's twofold. It really hits hard in my heart professionally and personally, both. Professionally, it truly makes me feel like I am not trusted as a professional. I know my kindergarten standards through and through, and nowhere in our curriculum does it have anything about teaching sexual orientation or sexual identity. So for them to say that's happening, it's kind of crazy. But we should be able to have discussions, and that's what we're encouraged to do in kindergarten. And then personally, because
my memories of kindergarten, we're learning to tell time,
the alphabet,
right? The
counting,
alphabet,
coloring in the lines, doing some learning some writing and things like this. Very basic things. We didn't sit around and have sit-ins. No.
Talking about
adult things.
I don't remember that.
Well, and you know what? He said it's not part of the curriculum, then he shouldn't worry about anything.
Yeah.
Just because something's not part of the curriculum doesn't mean teachers don't talk about it. I'll tell you that right now. So to hide behind that is ridiculous.
Exactly.
But if he's saying, well, it's not part of the curriculum, then why does he even care?
Yeah.
Why is he even upset about this?
Let's get back to it. It's a kindergarten teacher here in Florida.
My kids do have questions. They want to know.
Now this is, I stopped it real quick there. Now, this is just a pet peeve of mine. People in the audience listening that are school teachers, you may not like this, but I don't like it when teachers say, my kids. They are not your kids. They are your students.
All teachers say that.
They are your students. And the problem is, a lot of teachers, when they say my kids, they mean that literally, like they're your students, not your kids. They're their parents' kids. And that's part of the problem.
That's a term all teachers use.
Yeah, but in the past when teachers use it, they meant it like my students. Right now, what this guy means is they're my kids. Like they belong to me. Mm-hmm. He doesn't mean like my students. And that's part of the problem. Anyway, back.
The reason that is because the parents are so uninvolved at the school.
I don't know. They got this bill passed.
No. Hold on. I'm just saying overall, this is, in general, maybe it's different now. But parents are not overly involved. The teachers, half the time when I used to have when I used to have the open house, half the parents never showed up. They are not involved. They don't worry about it as much. So there's not that connection with the parents. So the teachers do feel like they get close to the children, and you do. Teaching them 9 months out of the year, every day, 5 days a week. You get close to your kids and you get friendly.
But they're not your kids.
But it does sometimes feel that way, especially when you don't understand that they do have a parent involved, that the parent has a say-so. Parents need to get more involved with the kids and with the school to let the teacher know, I'm involved, I'm here, this is my child, not yours.
Oh, let's get back to it.
My kids do have questions. They want to know who my partner is in pictures outside of my classroom, and I should be able to speak to that.
So do you worry that you won't even be able to talk about your own personal home life? I mean, I have a child in kindergarten right now. I know exactly that my child has 2 teachers, one of which has a daughter at home and is single. The other
now this MSNBC person, their kid probably goes to private school, which and not in Florida, so none of this applies.
So what does he mean when they see pictures outside of the classroom?
He has pictures of his vacations and stuff around with his husband.
But he said outside of the classroom.
I guess on the wall.
Where the hell are there pictures of him and his husband outside of the classroom?
Exactly. That's the problem.
That is bizarre.
I never remember any of my teachers showing pictures of them with their husband and kids.
What happens is...
I don't remember seeing anything like that.
What happens is these kids understand a little bit, and these teachers wear some kind of symbol on their body or have something in the classroom to spark a conversation. Because kids are very curious. So they might look at something and say, why do you have a rainbow flag in your classroom? Why are you wearing a rainbow watch? Why they do it on purpose to get the conversation going, so the kids will start the conversation.
And they don't. And the out is they didn't initiate it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a manipulation.
Is married and has 4 children. I know everything about their lives because my kid tells me.
Absolutely. You are 100% correct. That's what we do as educators. We build relationships with our kids. And in order,
what the hell? We build this is very strange to me. This is what we do as educators. We build relationships with our kids. I thought you educated children.
Well, they're misleading the audience here. There's nothing in the bill that says he cannot have a picture of his husband or tell his students he's married to a man. That is not what this bill is about. But what they're trying to do in the media is they're calling it the "Don't Say Gay" because they're trying to give you the impression that a teacher can't even tell their kids they're gay. That's not true at all.
Yeah.
That is they're lying to you about what this parental rights bill is about. All this bill is about is between K through 3, teachers cannot teach or discuss gender or sexuality of any kind, not just gay sex, even straight sex, cannot discuss it to kids of that age. They can't have gay pride parades, which they're having in Texas.
But after third grade, they can do whatever they want.
It does not belong. But see, the thing is, they've realized they have a captive audience with these brains that are like sponges. And they quickly figured out that they can very easily brainwash these children into a certain way of thinking. And it's working. It's working. A lot of these kids are...
We're almost done here. So let's get back to this teacher who doesn't seem concerned about reading, writing, and arithmetic.
No, just his
to build relationships. You talk about your home life. You talk about what you do on the weekends. That's building community. It scares me death that I am not going to be able to have these conversations with my children.
Boo-hoo.
Because they're going to ask me what I did on the weekend. I don't want to have to hide that my partner and I went paddleboarding this weekend, because then they ask, well, what does partner mean, Mr. Bernard? And, I'm worried. Can I tell them what it means? I'm also worried for my kids. I have a little girl this year who has 2 moms, and the kids are curious about her 2 moms. They want to know.
Okay. Well, the little girl can talk about her moms all day and all night. It's
That's not
about
what the bill says at all.
No.
About her 2 moms. If they go to her and ask her about her 2 moms and she doesn't know what to say, they're going to come to me and ask me. And then, so what do I do? It opens up for parents to really take some legal action against the schools and teachers. And
That's right.
Yeah.
Here's what you do.
Oh, my goodness.
When I was teaching, I would have kids ask me personal questions all the time. And I taught middle school. They're very curious about their teacher's life. That is true. And you know what I would say to them? None of your business. That's it. They would ask me about you, Emily. I would tell them some things, but I never discussed my personal business with my students in depth. And I wouldn't discuss vacations or things we did in our private life. I would just say to them, get back to your homework. Get back to your assignment. That's not why we're here. Kids ask questions all the time. So if he has a student that has 2 moms and the kids start asking about things like that, you say to students, go home and ask your parents. Ask them about it.
See, this is the problem.
Get back to your spelling lesson or whatever. This is ridiculous.
This is what they're missing. When I was in 5th grade, the principal of the school, I cannot remember his name, but the principal of the school was the senior pastor at the local Baptist church.
Yeah.
And I went to the church with my grandparents. My great-grandparents were still alive. My great-grandparents went to the church. And I would go to the church with them, and I'd see them in church. And I mean, in Florida, this is like 1982, right? This is in Central Florida. This is a Southern Baptist evangelical Baptist preacher, like out of the movies. You know what I'm talking about? And he was the principal of my school. But when he was in school, you wouldn't know he was a preacher. You wouldn't know any of that.
Exactly.
And he was one of those evangelizing preachers. Right. You know what I'm talking about, like the kinds of the movies. And he was a good guy because it didn't belong in the school.
That's exactly right.
And what's happened here is teachers, and it's not just with this issue. It's with a lot of issues. Teachers have no boundaries with their students now. And
that's exactly right.
It needs to be more professional, not so laid back, like where it's some 60s what are those places they used to go through, the communes or whatever in the 60s? I don't know what the professionalism between teacher and student has been lost by these teachers.
Here's the thing with kids at all levels. They want to do anything they can to divert you from the schoolwork. Okay? Anytime they can get you talking about something else that does not relate to school or homework or studying, I experience this all the time. They were always trying to divert my attention into other things. And if you're not careful, before you know it, the period's over and no work has been done. And it's been a free hour of just conversation. And kids do that all the time. They try to deflect off the school, deflect off the studying, and get the teacher distracted. It's a tactic. And as they get older, they do it more, middle school especially. But kids do this very early on, even without realizing it. And they don't want to study. They want to play. They want to have fun. And having talk time with the teacher is more fun than learning spelling or learning math. So they try to distract the teacher. And like I said, a lot of these activist teachers where certain things or have certain points of conversation on their bulletin boards to elicit these kinds of discussions, like you said, where they're not bringing up the topic, but the kid brings it up and it opens that door. And this bill is just giving parents. This is all a result of what happened when they painted parents as terrorists in that one school district and said parents have no say.
Loudoun County, Virginia.
This is a result of that of what the liberals did. So blame them for getting this going.
That's right. Now, listen, we are all out of time, but thanks everyone for tuning in. We will talk to you next time. I'm Brian Craig, always joined by my wife and co-host Kathy. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Do you love chili? Of course you do. Who doesn't, right? If you want the freshest tasting chili sauce you have ever had, look no further than Sauce Up NYC on Etsy.com. That's all one word. When you shop at Sauce Up NYC on Etsy, check out their chef-curated, best tasting fresh chimichurri sauce. It's handmade with incredible and fresh ingredients. And don't miss out on Sauce Up NYC's best tasting 100% all natural chili crisp. It's crunchy, sweet, savory, and hot. It's ultra versatile and bursting with mind-blowing all-natural earth spice blends that's packed with a punch of antioxidants. It's the perfect balance of flavor and texture to boost your health and mood. Drizzle it, spread it, dab it, dollop it on everything. Sauce Up NYC on Etsy.com. That's all one word. Their mission is to flavor up health, and up foodie experiences that make you say wow, and you'll taste it. Go right now to Sauce Up NYC on Etsy.com. That's all one word. Sauce Up NYC on Etsy.com.